Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Monday, January 19th, 2026.
It's good to be here.
You know, if you've glanced at the headlines this morning, or even just doom-scrolled for 5 minutes while waiting for your coffee,
We've all been there.
you might have this distinct impression that someone just flipped the entire board game over.
Mm.
We are looking at a stack of stories today that, they just suggest the fundamental maps of our world are being aggressively redrawn.
That's absolutely the through line today. Both the physical maps, the lines drawn on the globe, and, the boundaries of what digital intelligence can do. We're seeing this convergence of high-stakes geopolitical maneuvering, literally in the Arctic Circle, and at the same time, what I'd call boundary-breaking shifts in Silicon Valley.
Physical territory and digital territory.
Both being claimed with equal ferocity. It's a fascinating moment.
So here's the mission for this dive. We need to decode why. Why is the United States risking a trade war with its oldest allies over what looks like a massive chunk of ice?
Right. And why are venture capitalists suddenly breaking their own golden rules to pour money into artificial intelligence?
And then how a discovery inside a nebula millions of miles away might just put all of our terrestrial squabbles into some kind of perspective.
It's a heavy menu today, for sure. We've got the Greenland crisis. We're talking tariffs, minerals, and something called a trade bazooka.
We do. And then there's unconventional diplomacy in Gaza, which apparently involves billion-dollar entry fees.
We'll have to unpack that one. And then in tech, Sequoia Capital is breaking taboos to back Anthropic, plus the rise of what's being called physical AI.
Plus iron ghosts in space, primates rewriting evolutionary theory, and Dolly Parton turning 80.
You have to have priorities. Right?
You have to. Let's start with the ice. Let's start with Greenland, because this feels like a headline from a different century, but the economic implications are very, very 2026.
They absolutely are. So President Donald Trump is back in office, and he's renewed this push to acquire Greenland from Denmark.
But the way he's doing it this time isn't just a tweet or some offhand comment.
No, it is a hard economic lever. And we need to be really precise about what's happening because the details here are everything.
Okay.
This isn't a blanket tariff on the entire European Union. It's a very targeted 10% tariff on imports from 8 specific countries.
And these are all NATO countries.
Every single one. We're talking about NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, so obviously Denmark is on the list, but also Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and Finland.
And there's a ticking clock attached to this, I saw.
There is. June 1st, 2026. If a deal isn't reached by then, that 10% tariff jumps to 25%.
The official rationale from the White House is national security. Specifically countering Russian and Chinese influence in the Arctic. But it seems, counterintuitive.
How so?
Well, you're taxing your own military allies to secure a strategic flank. Usually you buy your friends dinner, you don't send them a bill for it.
It is a paradox, isn't it? You're squeezing the very partners you rely on for NATO's eastern defense in order to secure the northern flank. But if you start to peel back the layers here, this isn't really about land in the traditional sense. It's about the periodic table.
Rare earth minerals.
Correct. We are talking about the essential building blocks for the entire 21st century economy. Lithium, cobalt, dysprosium, all of it.
And right now, China has a stranglehold on that market.
A near total stranglehold. And this is the key point. It's not just on the mining of these elements, but crucially on the processing of them.
So Greenland isn't just a strategic island. It's being seen as a potential battery pack for the entire U.S. economy.
That is exactly the calculus. Greenland holds some of the largest undeveloped deposits of these minerals on the planet. For an administration that's so focused on America First industrial independence, acquiring Greenland, or at the very least controlling its mineral output, is seen as the only way to break that dependency on Beijing.
It's a resource acquisition, just disguised as a real estate deal.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But the reaction from Europe hasn't exactly been, let's make a deal.
To put it mildly, no. The response has been incredibly unified and, frankly, hostile. The term that's circulating in Brussels, in Belgium, is a trade bazooka.
A trade bazooka?
The European Union is preparing a massive retaliation package. We're hearing it targets U.S. goods valued at around 93 billion euros.
93 billion, that's what, over 100 billion U.S. dollars?
It's a massive escalation. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen drew a very hard line. Her quote was, "Europe will not be blackmailed."
And the UK. Where do they stand on this? It puts them in a tight spot post-Brexit.
It really does, trying to balance that trade relationship with the U.S. But security seems to be trumping trade here. Prime Minister Keir Starmer reportedly got on the phone with President Trump and called the tariffs completely wrong and counterproductive.
And Germany.
The German response is even more tangible. They've actually withdrawn 15 soldiers from Greenland.
15 soldiers. I mean, that sounds negligible.
Militarily it is. But in the language of diplomacy, withdrawing military personnel, even a small number, is like shouting. It's a very loud signal that you believe the fundamental security architecture is fraying. German industry leaders are just calling the demands unreasonable.
I want to touch on this idea. I've seen some analysts discussing this concept of a tripolar reset. How does the Greenland move fit into that theory?
It's the essential macro context for all of this. We're moving away from that unipolar world of the 90s and 2000s where the U.S. was really the sole hegemon.
Right.
The new theory posits a tripolar order, the U.S., China, and Russia as the three main poles of power. In that new setup, the, let's call them unclaimed or distinct zones, like the Arctic and Africa, they become the new battlegrounds for resources and influence.
So the U.S. move on Greenland is effectively an attempt to lock down the Arctic pole of that triad before anyone else can.
Precisely. It's like a global game of risk, except the pieces are real economies and, real people.
And there was also a, let's say, a personal footnote to this whole diplomatic crisis, something about a Nobel Prize.
And of course, you really can't ignore the personal element in all of this. It's just, it's always there in geopolitics, isn't it?
It seems so.
There was a letter reportedly sent from President Trump to the Norwegian Prime Minister, and in it, he essentially stated that he no longer feels an obligation to think only of peace regarding these alliances, because he was snubbed for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Which went to Maria Corina Machado.
The Venezuelan opposition leader, yes.
So you have this bizarre mix of hard-nosed resource strategy and, well, personal grievance driving global trade policy.
Which just makes the whole situation that much more volatile and unpredictable.
Speaking of volatile, let's pivot to the Middle East. We're seeing these reports of a new proposal for Gaza that sounds, well, it sounds less like a peace treaty and more like some kind of corporate restructuring.
A board of peace, they're calling it.
Right. What is that?
It's definitely unconventional. The report suggests the U.S. is proposing a new governance structure for Gaza, and it would be overseen by this international board. But the real sticking point, the thing that has everyone talking, is the entry fee.
Entry fee.
The report says President Trump is charging countries $1 billion for a permanent seat on this board.
You're kidding? Pay-to-play peacekeeping.
In the most literal sense, yes. And just look at the invite list. Invitations have reportedly gone out to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin. So you're trying to bring Russia into the fold in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That seemed to directly contradict the containment strategy we were just talking about in the Arctic.
It does seem contradictory on the surface, but if you look at it again through that tripolar, very transactional lens, it starts to make a kind of cold sense. It's acknowledging Russia as a major stakeholder in the region, provided they're willing to pay the admission price.
It's treating Gaza's governance almost like a board of directors for a distressed asset.
That's it exactly.
How is that landing with the actual people who live there? Or with Israel, for that matter?
Poorly, as you can imagine. Israel reportedly feels completely sidelined, like they're being treated as a secondary party to these new shareholders. And the Palestinians are criticizing the entire concept as commodifying their sovereignty.
You're removing the political rights aspect and just replacing it with a management structure.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, just to the north, in Syria, the map there is also changing, but in a way that feels a lot more permanent. We have a ceasefire between the government and the SDF.
This is a major, major pivot. The SDF, that's the Syrian Democratic Forces, for years they were the U.S.-backed partners in the fight against ISIS. They operated with a lot of autonomy in the northeast of the country.
Right, our guys on the ground.
And now, after weeks of clashes, they've struck a deal with President Ahmed al-Shaara's government in Damascus.
So does this signal the end of U.S. influence in that specific theater?
I think it signals a consolidation of power. The SDF is reading the writing on the wall, the Americans are pivoting, their focus is elsewhere, so they're aligning with the central government in Damascus to survive.
It shifts the entire center of gravity back to the Syrian government.
It does, and it's substantial enough that the Syrian president actually postponed a planned trip to Berlin, in Germany, just to manage this transition.
Before we leave this region, we have to talk about Sudan.
Hmm.
It's easy to get caught up in the high-level chess moves, but the UN report on Sudan, it just paints a picture of absolute human devastation.
It's harrowing. The language used by Volker Turk, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, is just chilling. He used the phrase, an abyss of unimaginable dimensions.
And what does that mean on the ground?
It means sexual violence being used systematically as a weapon of war. It means famine conditions in El Fasher. It means the complete and total destruction of basic infrastructure, hospitals, water treatment, everything.
It's a reminder that while leaders are arguing over tariffs and billion-dollar board seats, there are millions of people just living through a complete collapse of civil society.
Exactly. And the key takeaway from the UN report is that a simple ceasefire isn't going to be enough. You can't just stop the shooting. You need a rights-based reconstruction, or the whole cycle just repeats itself in a few years.
A sobering thought. Okay, let's shift gears. We've talked a lot about physical borders being redrawn. Let's talk about the boundaries of intelligence. There's a massive story coming out of Silicon Valley this week involving Sequoia Capital.
This is a real bellwether moment for the tech industry, I think. Sequoia is one of the most storied venture capital firms in history. I mean, they backed Apple, Google.
They're a kingmaker.
A kingmaker, and they are a major backer of OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT. Now, the unwritten rule in venture capital is that you pick a horse and you ride it. You do not back the arch rival of your prize investment.
But they just did. They just invested in Anthropic.
They did. Anthropic, the makers of the Claude series of models, which is arguably the strongest competitor to OpenAI's models right now, and Anthropic is aiming for a valuation of around $350 billion.
So why break the golden rule? Is this just FOMO? A fear of missing out on the next big thing?
I think it's more strategic than just FOMO. It's a huge admission from one of the smartest players in the game that the AI market is not going to be a winner-take-all outcome.
Which is different from other tech revolutions.
Very different. Think about search with Google or social with Facebook. One player came to dominate. Sequoia, betting on both OpenAI and Anthropic, suggests they believe the AI market will either fragment or just become so massive that multiple giants will coexist.
So they're moving from a strategy of picking the winner to just owning the sector.
That's it. It's a portfolio approach to the future of intelligence. It suggests the entire AI ecosystem is becoming too big to fail, or maybe even too big to predict.
And speaking of that expansion, we're hearing a new term coming out of CES 2026, the Consumer Electronics Show, physical AI. What distinguishes this from from robots?
That's a great question, because the line is getting blurry. Historically, robots were dumb, right? You programmed them to move arm X to coordinate Y. If the part on the assembly line was an inch to the left, the whole system failed.
Right, it was repetitive, not intelligent.
Exactly. Physical AI is about giving these machines a brain that can perceive and understand the physical world, usually visually and spatially.
So they can improvise.
In a controlled way, yes.
Yeah.
We saw a company at CES called Bucket Robotics, which is a great name, by the way.
It is.
They were demonstrating systems that use computer vision to inspect manufacturing parts for defects. And the big breakthrough is that they don't need humans to sit there and manually label thousands of images to teach the AI what a good part and a bad part look like.
So the AI infers it on its own.
It infers it. It learns the standard and then identifies the anomalies. That's a massive leap in efficiency.
But it also sounds like the death knell for a whole class of quality control and inspection jobs.
It absolutely accelerates the transition to what people are calling the autonomous economy. We're not just automating repetitive motion anymore. We are starting to automate perception and judgment. And that changes the labor equation in logistics and manufacturing fundamentally.
And the big players are getting behind this.
Oh, yeah. NVIDIA is releasing major new software frameworks to support this development. So the foundational infrastructure is being laid down very, very rapidly.
With AI becoming this capable, this pervasive, the counter movement is always privacy. And we're seeing a new player enter the chat, literally. Moxie Marlinspike is back.
He is the founder of Signal, which is kind of the gold standard for encrypted messaging.
Right.
He just launched a new company and a new product called Confer, and it's being pitched as the anti-ChatGPT.
So is Confer trying to be the Signal of AI? Is that the idea?
That is the entire pitch. The core promise is simple. We do not train our models on your data. Full stop.
Which is the single biggest fear for any enterprise looking to adopt this technology. They're terrified of feeding their trade secrets into a model that then regurgitates them to a competitor.
Precisely. In an era where data has become the world's primary commodity, Privacy becomes a luxury product, and Confer is making a huge bet that people, and more importantly, companies, will be willing to pay a premium for silence and security.
It's interesting to see how the broader culture is grappling with this. You had Ben Affleck go viral this week talking about AI's role in Hollywood.
And it was a surprisingly nuanced take, actually. He wasn't doing the usual doom and gloom, the robots are coming for our jobs thing.
Yeah.
He basically said AI is and will be an incredible tool for all the technical heavy lifting, things like visual effects, color correction, editing, that sort of thing. But he was deeply skeptical that an AI could ever replicate what he called the inconsistent spark of human emotion that makes a great performance resonate.
So he thinks the flaws are the feature, not the bug.
Exactly. But then on the other hand, you have the mortgage company Fannie Mae releasing a new ad that features an AI-generated voice of Donald Trump.
Now, they had permission for that, right?
They did, which is a key legal point. But it still blurs the line for the public.
Yeah.
If you can perfectly synthesize a voice that carries that much political and cultural weight, the very concept of truth in media just gets even murkier.
It really does. Okay, let's get off the planet for a moment. Let's talk science. The James Webb Space Telescope. The JWST is just, it is still undefeated in its ability to blow our minds. What's this about the Ring Nebula?
This is just a hauntingly beautiful discovery. JWST peered deep into the Ring Nebula, which is the remnant of a dying star, and it found something no one expected. A giant bar-shaped structure made almost entirely of iron.
A bar of iron floating in a nebula. It sounds artificial, like something was left behind.
In a cosmic sense, it was. The prevailing theory right now is that this bar of iron is the vaporized remains of a planet.
A whole planet.
A planet that used to orbit that star. As the star died, it expanded into a red giant and completely obliterated a nearby world. That iron structure we're seeing is essentially the planetary core, stripped of everything else and just left suspended in the gas.
That is incredibly humbling.
It's a memento mori on a galactic scale, isn't it? And that's not all from JWST. We also got the sharpest, most detailed view ever of the dusty disk of matter swirling around a supermassive black hole. We are literally seeing the universe in high definition for the first time in human history.
And a little closer to home, our own star is acting up a bit.
It is. We just had an X-class solar flare. That's the most powerful category. And it launched a massive coronal mass ejection, a CME, that's heading straight for Earth.
So what does that mean for us?
Well, on the plus side, we might see some spectacular auroras, the northern lights, much farther south than usual. They're saying perhaps as far south as Mississippi.
Mississippi, that's incredible.
It is. It really speaks to the intensity of this current solar cycle. But, it's also a major headache for power grid operators and for anything that relies on GPS. When the sun burps, Earth's magnetic field definitely feels it.
From the very, very large to the very biological. There's a primate study in our stack of stories today that challenges some pretty old evolutionary assumptions.
This is fascinating stuff. For a very long time, evolutionary biology has focused almost exclusively on reproduction. If a particular behavior didn't directly lead to making more babies, it was often seen as a sort of evolutionary anomaly or a dead end.
Right, it didn't fit the model.
Exactly. But this new research on primates suggests that same-sex behavior has a distinct and powerful evolutionary upside.
So it's not a glitch, it's a feature.
That's the argument. The study found that these behaviors are crucial for promoting social bonding and for conflict resolution within the group. It acts as a kind of social glue for the community.
And if the group is more cohesive, the group as a whole survives better.
Precisely. It shifts the focus away from the classic survival of the fittest individual to something more like survival of the most cohesive and cooperative community.
I like that.
Yeah.
It feels like it broadens the definition of what's natural.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick check-in on health. I see some good news for cancer detection.
Yes, this is very promising. It's a new type of blood test that uses something called circulating cell-free DNA, or cfDNA.
Okay.
And it can predict, with high accuracy, how well a particular treatment is going to work for patients with HER2 positive breast cancer. It allows doctors to know much faster if a treatment isn't working, so they can pivot to something else. It's precision medicine getting sharper and sharper.
And we should probably mention the Tylenol story that's making the rounds again, just to clear the air.
Yes, this is an important clarification. The World Health Organization, along with multiple large-scale studies, has confirmed there is no credible causal link between acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, and autism.
It's one of those internet theories that just refuses to die.
It is. But the science just doesn't back it up. The very real danger with Tylenol isn't autism. It's acute liver damage from taking too much. That's what people need to be aware of.
Good to know. Okay, let's talk money. The global economy is clearly feeling the tremors from all this geopolitical shaking. We mentioned the Greenland tariffs. How is the market reacting to that threat?
It's a classic flight to safety. Gold and silver prices are hitting new highs. When investors see a potential trade war brewing between NATO allies, they get nervous. They stop buying risk, like stocks, and they start buying hard assets, like precious metals.
And the chip sector. You said it was a crunch.
We are definitely back in a chip crunch. It seems President Trump's new industrial policies are causing a significant bottleneck in the global supply of memory chips.
So prices are going up.
Soaring. And it's hitting major companies like Samsung and SK Hynix really hard. It just goes to show how fragile and interconnected that supply chain still is.
It really feels like every time Washington sneezes, a factory in Seoul, South Korea, catches a cold.
That is the globalized reality we live in. It's unavoidable.
We also saw some brutal news for Stellantis. That's the parent company of Jeep and Chrysler.
Stock is down 43%. That's not a dip. That's a bloodbath. It really highlights the immense difficulty of the transition we talked about earlier. These legacy automakers are trying to pivot to electric vehicles and software-defined cars, but they're facing just brutal competition.
If you stumble for even a moment right now, the market will punish you instantly.
Without mercy.
And on a slightly weird specific note, there's a plan to build a New York Stock Exchange in Dallas, Texas.
The Dallas Stock Exchange, yes. President Trump apparently hates the idea, says it undermines New York City. But it's a fascinating sign of the times. It shows that even the century-long dominance of Wall Street isn't safe from competition. Texas wants to be the new financial center of the country.
All right, let's do a rapid fire around the world because there are some really critical human stories happening right now that we need to touch on. Spain.
A terrible tragedy near Cordoba in the south of Spain. A collision between two high-speed trains. The latest reports say at least 39 people have died, over 100 injured.
The worst rail disaster there in over a decade, I read.
It is, and it's going to raise some very serious questions about infrastructure safety and investment in Europe.
And while Spain deals with that, Chile is on fire.
Literally. A state of catastrophe has been declared in the south of Chile due to massive wildfires. At least 18 people have died, 20,000 evacuated.
And at the exact same time, southern Africa is underwater.
The contrast is stark. Mozambique, South Africa, Zimbabwe, they're all dealing with catastrophic flooding that has killed over 200 people. You're seeing these climate extremes hitting simultaneously in different hemispheres.
It's dizzying. I mean, even Florida saw snow.
For the second year in a row, people are starting to call it the snowy state. Now, it's anecdotal, of course, but it fits the broader pattern of deeply disrupted and unpredictable weather systems.
Back in the U.S., tensions seem to be running very high in Minnesota, specifically regarding ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency.
It's very tense. Protests against immigration enforcement have escalated to the point where the Pentagon has put 1,500 troops on standby.
Domestic military deployments, that's always a flashpoint.
Always. And it's become a cultural touchstone. Even Bruce Springsteen weighed in from the stage at a concert, criticizing the move.
When the boss gets involved, you know it's broken through into the mainstream conversation. And speaking of domestic policy, we're starting to see some real movement on Project 2025.
Yes, the administration is beginning to implement some of the policies laid out in that framework, particularly changes that affect the independence of the Federal Reserve. It's a significant and controversial shift in how monetary policy interacts with the executive branch.
Over in the UK, a very different kind of crackdown is being proposed on social media.
This would be huge if it happens. A group of 60 MPs from the Labour Party are urging the Prime Minister to ban social media entirely for anyone under the age of 16.
A total ban. That would be a massive societal experiment.
It would. It reflects this growing consensus, at least in some political circles, that the digital environment is just toxic for adolescent development. But the enforcement logistics would be an absolute nightmare.
And the political landscape there is also shifting.
It is. You're seeing more conservative MPs like Andrew Rosendale defecting to the Reform UK party. It just shows that the fragmentation of the right wing in British politics is continuing.
One last story from that part of the world, from Iran, caught my eye. A hack of their state-run television.
A very brazen moment. For a few seconds, the national broadcast was hijacked to show a message from a prominent opposition figure, Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi.
How did the regime respond?
Furiously, the president's office released a statement calling any attack, symbolic or otherwise, on the supreme leader a declaration of war. It shows just how brittle they are and how vulnerable they are to information warfare.
Okay, let's try to end on some lighter notes. Culture, sports. The AFCON final sounds like it was messy.
Chaotic is definitely a word. AFCON, the Africa Cup of Nations. In the end, Senegal beat Morocco 1-0. But at one point in the middle of the final, the entire Senegal team walked off the pitch.
They walked off. In the final.
In the final. They were protesting a controversial penalty call. It was high drama, but eventually they came back on. Morocco missed the penalty, and Senegal went on to win the cup.
And here in the U.S., the NFL playoffs are heating up, or maybe I should say freezing over.
The Bears versus the Rams game was played in just bitter cold. It was a true winter football battle. Classic stuff.
But the real MVP of the week, maybe the century, has to be Dolly Parton.
An absolute legend. She just turned 80 years old.
And the stats on her life's work are just incredible.
It goes so far beyond the music. Her Imagination Library program has given away 300 million free books to children.
300 million.
She donated $1 million of her own money to help fund COVID vaccine research. She is the absolute definition of using celebrity for public good. Oh, and apparently she owns over 350 wigs.
That's an essential piece of gear. Yeah, need that. We also had a bit of a scare in the gaming world. An explosion at Rockstar North.
Yeah, the developers of Grand Theft Auto 6 up in Edinburgh, Scotland. It turned out to be a boiler malfunction. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, but can you imagine the sheer panic among gamers if the GTA 6 source code had been damaged?
The entire internet would have simply melted down.
Yeah.
Speaking of things melting down, did you hear about Penn and Teller?
The magicians, yeah. They had to cancel a run of their Las Vegas shows because of what they're calling a nasty injury. No details were given, but, in their line of work, that could mean almost anything.
And Prince Harry is back in court in London.
He is. He's appearing in the High Court for his case against the Daily Mail, alleging unlawful information gathering. He's just not letting this go. He seems absolutely determined to try and change the British media landscape.
And finally, and I feel like this is a good place to end, chips on a beach.
Thousands and thousands of bags of potato chips washed up on a beach near Eastbourne in the UK.
A snack spill of epic proportions.
Oh, a salty disaster for the cleanup crew, I'm sure, but an absolute feast for the seagulls, I would imagine.
I bet. Okay, let's try to pull this all together. We have gone from terrace on glaciers to iron ghosts in nebulas to chips on a beach. What is the common thread here?
I think the thread is redefinition. We are actively redefining who owns what, who owns the resources, whether they're rare earth minerals in the Arctic or our personal data in the cloud.
And we're redefining relationships.
Exactly. We're redefining alliances in NATO, on the ground in Syria, even in the venture capital world in Silicon Valley. The old maps, the old rule books, they are being completely rewritten in real time.
It really feels like a global scramble. A scramble for territory, a scramble for intelligence, a scramble for security.
It is. And I think for you, for the listener, the takeaway is to watch where these new lines are being drawn. Because whether it's the price of the battery in your phone being determined by a negotiation over Greenland, or the privacy of your thoughts being determined by an AI startup you've never heard of, these aren't just abstract headlines.
No, they're the parameters of the future we're all going to be living in.
That's it. It's exactly.
Well said.
Yeah.
It is a lot to process, but that is why we dive deep. Stay curious, watch the map, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.